Welcome to the program. Topic for today's program is Gokhale's Bill for Compulsory Primary Education 1910 to 1912. Objectives set for today's program are: first, to get acquainted with the purpose behind the introduction of Gokhale's Bill 1910 to 1912, to get an insight in some of the extracts from the bill, to become familiar with the important suggestions contained in the Resolution 1910, to know about the Gokhale second attempt of introduction of Bill 1911 to 12. Lord Curzon, the Governor General and Viceroy of India from 1899 to 1905, had initiated a new policy of large grants to primary education, which has brought about considerable expansion of primary education between 1905 and 1912. But the official preference for qualitative improvement soon began to make itself felt, and government, instead of accepting the principle of compulsory primary education, began to occupy itself more and more with the qualitative improvements. This development was not liked by the Indian nationalist opinion, which began to force government for the introduction of compulsory primary education. Also, the nationalist movement and the resultant awakening had drawn the attention of the masses to the need for right type of education in the country. The nationalist leader were not ignorant of the fact that even after the 150 years of British rule, the education of the masses had reached a low level where only 5% of the people were literate, and out of all the children of the school going age, only 2.38% boys and 2.07% girls attended schools. But the demand for it was increasing from day to day with the growing population of India. In the meantime, Maharaja Sayaji Rao, Gaikwad of Baroda, introduced compulsory education throughout his state in 1906, which further strengthened the demand of compulsory primary education. The public demanded that what was done by the Gaikwad in Baroda, British government should do the same in India. Gopal Krishan Gokhale, a great champion of compulsory primary education in India, put this resolution of introduction of free and compulsory primary education in the Imperial Legislative Council in 1910. Gopal Krishan Gokhale, 1866 to 1915, besides being a statesman, social reformer and educator, was of the firm conviction that the moral and economic efficiency of the individuals could only be raised with free and compulsory primary education. Now we will discuss about Gokhale's Bill 1910 to 1912. Gopal Krishan Gokhale was a professor and principal of Pune Fergusson College for a number of years, President of Indian National Congress, founder of the Servants of Indian Society and member of the Imperial Legislature. Between 1910 and 1930, Gokhale made heroic efforts to make the government accept the principle of compulsory education. Gokhale moved the resolution for compulsory education in 1910, but withdrew it on the assurance from the government the whole question would be examined more carefully. As nothing was done seriously, Gokhale introduced the bill in the Imperial Legislative Council on March 16, 1911. The bill was debated for 2 days, that is March 18 and 19, 1912, and was rejected by 38 votes to 13. This did not come as a surprise to Gokhale, who had anticipated the results correctly. Now some of the extracts from Gokhale's Resolution 1910. Being the member of Imperial Legislative Council on March 19, 1910, Gokhale moved the following resolution in the Council: that this Council recommends that a beginning should be made in the direction of making elementary education free and compulsory throughout the country, and that a mixed commission of officials and non-officials be appointed at an early date to frame definite proposals. Gokhale's Resolution 1910 further reads, "My Lord, there is much truth in the homely adage that where there is a will, there is a way. I think that this question of compulsory and free primary education is now in the country the question of questions. The well-being of millions upon millions of children who are waiting to be brought under the humanizing influence of education depends upon it. The increased efficiency of the individuals, the higher general level of intelligence, the stiffening of the moral backbone of large sections of the community, none of these things can come without such education. In fact, the whole of our future as a nation is inextricably bound up with it. My Lord, however this resolution may be disposed of here today, I feel that in this matter we are bound to win. Now some of the extracts from the Statement of Objects and Reasons of the Bill 1910. Gokhale put forward that the object of this bill is to provide for the gradual introduction of principle of compulsion into the elementary education system of the country. The experience of other countries have established beyond dispute the fact that the only effective way to ensure a wide diffusion of elementary education among the masses of the people is by a resort to compulsion in some form or other. And the time has come when a beginning at least should be made in this direction in India. This bill is of purely permissive character and its provision will apply to areas notified by municipalities or district boards, which will be necessitated as may be laid down by the Government of India by rules. Moreover, no area can be notified without the previous sanction of provincial government, and further it must fulfill the test which the Government of India may by rules lay down as regarding the percentage of children already in at school within its limits. Finally, the provisions are intended to apply in the first instance only to boys, though later on a local body may extend them to girls. An age limit proposed are only 6 to 10 years. It's hoped that these are sufficient safeguards against any rash or injudicious action on the part of local bodies. This measure is essentially a cautious one. Indeed, to some it may appear to err too much on the side of caution. Now, some of the extracts of Gokhale's Elementary Education Bill 1911. The bill reads, "This, my lord, is briefly the whole of my bill. It is a small and humble attempt to suggest the first step of journey, which is bound to prove long and tedious, but which must be performed if the mass of the people are to emerge from their present conditions. My lord, this question of universal diffusion of education in India depends almost more than any other question on the hearty and sympathetic cooperation of the government and the leaders of the people. The government, in the first instance, adopt definitely the policy of such diffusion as it must. Secondly, not grudge to find the bulk of the money which will be required for it, as governments in most other civilized countries are doing. And this is what we are entitled to ask at the hands of government, in the name of justice, for the honor of government itself, and in the highest interests of the popular well-being. The leaders of the people, on their side, must bring to the task high enthusiasm, which will not be chilled by difficulties, courage, which will not shrink from encountering unpopularity if need be, and readiness to make sacrifices, whether of money or time or energy, which the cause may require. If a beginning is made without further delay, if both the government and the people pursue with the task in the right spirit, the whole problem may be solved before another generation rises to take our place. If it happens, the next generation will enter upon its own security of success. As for us, it will be enough to have labored for such an end, labored with only profound humility, but also with profound wisdom." Now some of the extracts from Gokhale's speech in the council. "My lord, I know that my bill will be thrown out before the day closes. I make no complaints. I shall not even feel depressed. I know too well that the story of preliminary efforts that were required even in England before the Act of 1870 was passed. Moreover, I always felt and have often said that we of the present generation in India can only hope to serve our country by our failures. The men and the women who will be privileged to serve her by their success will come later. We must be content to accept cheerfully the place that has been allotted to us in our onward march. The bell thrown out today will come back again and again, till on the steeping stones of its dead selves a major ultimately rise, which will spread a light of knowledge throughout the land. It may be that this anticipation will not come to be true. It may be that our efforts may not conduce even indirectly to the promotion of great cause, which we all have at the heart, and they may turn out after all to be nothing better than the mere ploughing of sands of the seashore. But, my Lord, whatever fate awaits our labour, one thing is clear: we shall be entitled to feel that we have done our duty, and where the call of our duty is clear, it's even better to labour and fail than not to labour at all. Now we will discuss about important suggestions contained in the resolution. Important suggestions contained in the resolution moved in the Legislative Council. First, that in the area where 35% boys were receiving education, elementary education should be made free and compulsory. This provision should apply to the age group 6 to 10 years. Second, the cost of primary education should be shared by the provincial government and local bodies. The local bodies and government bodies should bear the expenditure in the ratio of 1:2. Third, a secretary should be appointed to organize, supervise and look after the primary education. Fourth, there should be a separate department in the central government to draw up a scheme of the expansion of primary education, and in the budget statement there should be a portion describing the progress of primary education. Now we will discuss about partial acceptance of the resolution. The resolution was withdrawn on the assurance from the government that the whole question would be examined more carefully. The government, however, accepted only 5 suggestions. In 1910, Department of Education was established and a secretary was appointed to organize primary education. Record of primary education was also started publishing by the government, but government did not make primary education free and compulsory. Education remained in the hands of provincial government. Prior to this, education was in the hands of local government. Now, the Gokhale's second attempt of introduction of the bill. On March 16, 1911, Gokhale brought in a bill to make better provision in the extension of compulsory education. On March 18, he moved the resolution that his bill be examined by a select committee of 15 members of the Viceroy's Council. Main suggestions contained in the bill are: first, he suggested that compulsory primary education should be introduced in the areas where a certain percentage was fixed by the Governor General in Council. Second, after securing the sanction of government and local body shall enforce the rule, local bodies at the end were to have the right to introduce compulsion in the whole or part of the area under their jurisdiction. Third, local bodies were also given the right to levies to meet the cost of free and compulsory primary education. Fourth, expenditure on the education will be shared by the local bodies and provincial government in the ratio of 1:2. Fifth, it was also suggested by the Gokhale that primary education should be made compulsory for the boys of the age group 6 to 10, and the defaulting guardians should be penalized for non-compliance of the provision of sending the awards to recognized primary schools. Sixth, it was also recommended that the primary education shall be made compulsory for girls. Seventh, guardians whose monthly income is less than ₹10 should not be asked to pay any fee. Now, the impact of the bill. Gokhale's effort bore fruit gradually. His work was taken up by the Vithalbhai Patel. In 1917, he moved in the Bombay Legislative Council a bill for introduction of compulsory primary education. in the municipal limits of Bombay. This bill was passed with some modifications and became the first law on compulsory education in India. It's known as the Patal Act of 1918. Thus, we can conclude that while rejecting Gokhale's bill, the government promised to extend recurring and non-recurring grants to primary education. The government could not entirely ignore the growing demands for the spread of mass education. The seeds sown by Gokhale came up quickly for harvest. Gokhale's bill created a flutter in the British Parliament. Thus, this bill brings forth the issue of importance of primary education to the limelight, as said by Gokhale in the bill, that primary education is for the promotion of great cause that we all have at heart. This was all about Gokhale's bill for compulsory primary education. Hope you have benefited and enjoyed. Goodbye.